Okay, welcome back everybody again. We've let this dry overnight and we're going to do some of the shell coloring and the outlines. So I'm going to do a reverse of this one. So if you look at it, they have all the outlines, like the little lines in between the shell are tan, and all the colors are inside the tan. You can kind of see where the tan lines stand out. Now, feel free to do that if you want to. And you can do it in the same process if you want to and go back and paint tan over it. I've done quite a few of these, and there's a few that I have done that look like that. And I honestly, I like them both ways. And if, depending how the carve, like this one, we have really deep pockets on the dark color. So I'm gonna go ahead and just paint for speed. You can spend hours painting these little dots if you wanted to. But I'm gonna go ahead and paint basically everything blue, so all the lines and everything, and then later on we'll come back and paint the lines in. And I think I did earlier I mixed a little bit of green with the blue. I'm gonna darken a little bit with some metallic black. So we did blue, a little green, a little black. We don't want it to be the same color as the background, obviously. And probably the blue by itself right here would have looked great, but I'm just going to make it a little bit darker because we'll come up in the final shading of this. We'll come back and we'll add 2 or 3 different colors on top of that shell very lightly. So we want a fairly dark color on the shell. So there it is. Nice big angled brush again. Mouth teeth make a great brush holder. And we're just going to paint. So we're going to paint. Obviously, we're going to paint the shell and we're going to make an imaginary line. You'll see me do it not right there, but later on we'll have an imaginary line that comes out to about the edge of where that shell comes over the side. So, and I was just kind of showing you there, you could paint just the whole, you could paint just those sections and then come and leave the tan if you wanted to, but I'm going to paint everything blue and come back and outline everything in black. And then the lines will be black instead of tan. It looks pretty good. You'll see. It's a pretty nice looking paint. So here, once again, this is, this takes a little bit of an art. And believe me, I was all over the place on my first few. And I'm still all over the place. But once again, we've let this sit overnight. So if we need to, we can have a wet brush standing by and a paper towel. And you can you don't have to even take it all the way off. Just take your take your clean brush and just brush it along there and clean your edge up. And with nice dry paint underneath it, especially the metallics, man, it just comes off like it was never there. And if that paint was wet or even not completely cured, it would smear it all and it would look awful. So we're going to go all along the edge of the shell and we're going to make our pseudo or fake ridge along there. We're going to I'm just kind of picking where I think it is. So if you looked at the carve really closely, you could see a small edge, and I didn't do it on the last video, but I'll see if I can't go back and zoom in on a few of these for you guys since we're getting into some of the detail. So we're going to do this for all the blue parts. So if you look at the picture, you'll see where the blue is on the tan. So we'll go in and we'll make big sections. So fairly quick here. I think I'm going to speed up. Let's see me get a little bit quicker here. And it's a lot of tedious painting. And I believe not this one, because I've tried to limit all these to 20 minutes. They just get, they're long anyway, and I'm trying not to skip too much for you guys. So it's not a, geez, I didn't really see how he did anything. But the next video will actually finish this turtle with the shading and detailing. And this will be getting a lot closer. You'll start to see it, it'll start to look like a turtle, I guess. So here's another place where you just take your time, Take a nice, really small angled brush, keep it wet, and just push it down until you find an edge, and then glide that edge along the seam of your background. And super easy to clean that up with a wet brush if you go past a little bit, and you'll see me do that a lot probably because I definitely make mistakes. Right there, see, I'm just cleaning it up quick with a brush. I don't really allow any smudges at all. Even though we're going to come back and shade it, I just clean them up now. It takes 2 seconds. So right there, I'm showing you where I'm going to draw the line for the one of the paddles. So that's what I'm doing, just drawing these lines and all these little lines you see. So at the edge of the shell and the edge of the paddle, we'll draw a black line. It won't be very distinct, and it'll be kind of light, and it's hardly noticeable once it's done, but it really makes it look like it belongs there. And that's about the only thing we'll do in a black besides part of the eye. I mean, a true black. And if you skip the last video, it's really important to not shade in all black unless you've got a black subject that's a contrast you need. Because you can, if we're going to shade some of this, we'd do, like if you're going to shade the ocean, the coral or something, we would use a really, really dark blue, and it'll almost look black, but it's amazing what a difference a dark blue looks shading something like this versus a true black. And for the turtle, that tan to me is in my mind is basically a brown product. So we will darken a brown and use a dark brown for the shading. And yeah, you could take that yellow gold and that pale gold, and you could darken it all the way down to where you needed it. But we're just gonna use a metallic brown for the shading when we get there, and just darken it. Okay, still painting the paddle at record speed. And these little off arms, you can see I just pointed where I usually decide where I'm going to paint first. Sometimes I just dig into it, but I usually at least have a line, right? And you could draw a pencil line there if you wanted to or something, but it's usually not a big deal. That's a beautiful thing about these 3D carves. It really is paint by numbers until you get to the shading. And then you don't have to be an artist. You don't have to know a whole lot. You just have to apply some common sense techniques with colors and brush pressure and things like that. And we'll get into that a little more, and I'll try to explain the way I do it. I'm sure there's better ways out there, and I've tried everything. I've looked at some of the I haven't found anybody else doing the 3D card painting tutorials, but obviously there's 1,000 canvas professional painters out there that'll the 100-hour videos of painting this beautiful, beautiful photorealistic painting, which is just gorgeous. And it is an incredible talent what they're doing. I do respect it. There's the finished shading with the shells, and right now we're gonna do finish the last paddle, sorry. But anyway, back to the artists. They those are good to watch because they do have a lot of really good techniques. And unfortunately, almost all of them, there are some acrylic painters out there, but they use some fancy mediums, so you can mix stuff with your paint that makes it spread easier. And other than water, water also does that. But when you do see all these people, professional painters doing stain paintings, you can blend these paints 20 minutes later, and they just blend really nice. If you try to do a big a site, like a sky, and here I'm talking about what I'm going to do up here. I'm going to find another imaginary line right there. That's what I'm doing. And once again, we could paint every dot like that. We could take every dot and we could paint it just like that if we wanted to, but I'm going to do the whole thing, and I'm going to make an imaginary line and just kind of go around. And it looks a little bit hokey now, but when we're done, it'll look great. Yeah, but as far as the canvas painting with oils, it's a whole nother story to try to blend acrylics later. There's all kinds of techniques. You can spray it with a little water. You can get it really wet, but they do not blend like oil paints do. And I shouldn't say that for sure because I've never painted with oil paints. But from the tutorials I've seen, and you really can't apply those same techniques to acrylics. But you really don't need to. I've yet to find anything that I needed to, and I painted waterfalls. And if you look at my Facebook page, and go through the oodles of things that I've done, I've painted about everything out there as far as landscapes, and even done some old Korean Ives and some. I painted a Mona Lisa, and I've done a little bit of everything. So here we're just kind of randomly picking a nose. You'll see a lot of the 3D carves. This is one place where when you get around the bottom side, or the closer part to the board, it's the pictures don't match, right? Because the pictures don't have the depth, and it's not a straight down. Like there, they've got a angled depth that looks real, and we've got a big piece of wood that goes straight down, because our depth is not, our depth is basically depth, and it's straight down. We can't carve at an angle. So you kind of just have to make your best guess and decide what looks best for you. And if all else fails, shade the crap out of it when you're done. But so we made some imaginary lines. You can see like those little dashes under the eye. This one actually has some nice carving grooves that I kind of followed. But if not, just take your angled brush and just kind of dash it and tap it down on there, and it'll make those really nice impressions like the carves are. And then we'll go and add, later we'll add 2 or 3 colors to that, like right on the edge. So it'll put a nice black or brown edge around it to really kind of bring it out. Here we're just touching up the lines, make sure the lines are good. And all of this gets 2 coats as well. The second coat always goes on a lot easier. Little black. So now we're gonna start outlining everything. And this is seems like a little mundane step, and when you're finished, you hardly notice it, but it's very important. This really makes the whole model start to stand out, right? You start to see more definition. It's not just some painted pieces. And actually, the little guy's already looking pretty good, I think. And there I zoomed in a little bit for you guys. And you can see exactly where the line is, versus if any of you guys, gals, whoever, when I say gals, I'm from Midwest, so guys are everybody to me. But these cards have these little edges, and you pick the edge, and you bring your blue to that edge, and then tan to the other edge, and you've got a little rough edge there to put your line. So the card will tell you. I mean, any carve you do, it doesn't matter if it's landscape or ocean or Bengal tiger, whatever you do. Just look at your carve before you start and decide, okay, where are my borders at? Great, great. And don't worry about when you're painting them that they look, because they're going to look perfectly clean. They're going to kind of stand out and look a little fake. But I soften everything. So almost everything I paint, I mean, when we get to the coral, we'll do metallic corals, and they stand out, and it looks like you put a bunch of big stickers on it, and it looks kind of hokey, but just a little bit of shading, and it's amazing how it softens it and makes it look nice. Same thing with these lines. Right now they're bold, oh man, it's about the only black thing we're going to paint on this thing. So it's a solid black, and I'm using probably a 10-0 or a 3-0, and it's about as small as you can get without being ridiculously small, needle size. And these are dirt cheap. I'll be happy to leave once again. I'll be happy to leave links for any of this stuff if anybody really wants them. But quick search on Amazon. All this stuff is everything I have is from Amazon. I think you can buy 10 of these brushes for $7, so it's not expensive. And we're taking our fake line that we made, and we're just reinforcing it, making it look like it was supposed to be there with this black line. And you'll see me dabbing. Guys will see me dab a lot, either with my finger or the paper towel. And all I'm doing there is softening it, because you can tell right here in this picture, this line up near the front of the paddle, it looks bold, right? So if you saw that painted, you're like, well, that's you can tell that somebody just painted that. It's not very, it doesn't look realistic at all. That's because it's not soft. But we could either make it soft later, or you could dab it with your towel, or but that's you'll see me doing that a lot with the paper towel, and that's basically what I'm doing with my finger or the towel as I'm softening it. Or I made a mistake and I'm trying to cover it up by smearing it around, but softening it sounds better. So here's our little fake paddle we made. And this 3D card really didn't give us a lot of guidance here of where that how that foot would be formed. So I just made it up. I said, okay, that looks like a good thing. And this stuff really does get much easier to do. And this video is probably sped up 250 or 300%. So I'm not doing it this fast. And you can tell I'm not being super careful right here because, and you can see me kind of squiggle the brush around because I'm softening as I go. On some of these, I don't care if they're straight lines. So I have no problem just kind of wiggling it through there. And, because all of those little squiggle lines and imperfections make it look real. The harder you try to make it look perfect, the more unrealistic it's going to look, in my opinion. There's another line. It's just another form line. We'll shade that. You won't even be able to see that line later. We'll shade it in, but I just make a nice hard line because it's hard to shade pure dark and make it look good. So what I like to do is if I have something that I know has to be really, really dark, I'll put a line underneath it. And that tends to, make the shading look really dark, but you still have the softness of the shading. We're making a line around the imaginary piece we made. And if you opted to go with the tan raised section, then you wouldn't even have to do this. You'd just be painting in your little circles. And these were blue in the painting, but we're going to make them black because I want the eye to pop just a little bit. Eyes can be troublesome. Um, and I found that with some 3D carves, they're almost harder to paint an eye because you can go outside of the lines on the eyes, but man, they don't look. You can definitely tell on a 3D carve if you don't follow the contour of the wood. And a lot of times the eyes are misshaped because of the highlights. Every eye has you've got your iris and then your pupil, and then there's always a little white reflection in the eye. And that white reflection, I think, and I could be wrong, but a depth map is based on layers of light, right, or white. So the white part of the eye always throws the eye part of that reflection way off. So you can't. It's hard to make that real subtle. But we're not trying to be perfect anyway. So here we painted the mouth. We made that dark. You can see how that's already starting. Those just the few lines we made are starting to really make that little guy, that little turtle stand out. And we haven't done anything magical at all. I'm just here. I'm outlining, and I'm looking at the picture quite a bit, and you guys can't really see it right now. But I look at the picture for this, and here I left it a little soft, right? It doesn't need to be a hard line here. Just wipe it down, soft, wipe it. Little dots around the eyes. A few of them I'm making up because there's no carves, but we want to, trick is to make it symmetrical without making it look symmetrical. So asymmetrical. And that I can live with that. That's not too bad. And then we're gonna paint. We want to paint most of these lines that you see. We're gonna do something with them. Most of them will get painted before we actually start shading because we want the darkness behind them or underneath them. And you can always go back and do it later, but the shading really helps soften everything. And that's part of it. You can see here I talked about earlier adding little feathers on the bottom of that. Just outlining the eye some more. Here's the line for his snout. The line for his snout. Darkening those nostrils. Kind of adding a little black. So sorry guys, this section's getting a little long, but that's essentially the outlining. The next part we'll finish this guy. I think I can fit everything else to finish the turtle in the next section.